Dr. Kimmy, and today I want to talk to you about what I did when I found out my baby was Breech. So, I found out around 30 weeks that my baby was most likely Breech. Now, I say most likely because we did not have an ultrasound at that time, which is fine, but we were going off of my midwife's palpation skills. Now, palpation is just a fancy word for feeling. So we were going by her touch and what body parts she felt that she was finding. So at 30 weeks, that's still pretty early. And that's usually a point where most people are not really worried yet that baby is Breech. That being said, I didn't want to sit around and wait. So there are 3 key things that I did, that I started doing to help make sure that my baby wouldn't stay Breech. And these are things that moms can and should be doing regardless of whether they're Breech or their baby is already head down. So the first thing I did is I made sure I was getting adjusted. Now this is something that we've been doing all throughout pregnancy, but we stepped it up a little bit. There are a lot of reasons that getting adjusted is important. First and foremost, having your nervous system functioning properly is a really big deal and something every mom should want for her and her baby. But when it comes to pelvic positioning, that's a really big reason that we want to make sure that we're getting adjusted. So I have a little pelvis here. So if you can see the pelvic inlet right there, it's kind of a nice round shape. Now, if you take one of these bones and you kind of shift them, just like that, if you see what that does to the inlet, it changes the shape of that inlet, which can literally change everything in the pregnancy. It changes, obviously, the position of the pelvis itself. And then because of the way the uterus sits on top of the pelvis and the connections that it has, which, by way of tendons and ligaments, connecting it to the pelvis, that twisting and malposition of the pelvis can make a really big deal and make huge changes on the uterus itself. So if the ligaments that are holding the uterus in place are pulling unevenly because of that twisting there, it can actually cause an unevenness in space for the baby. So this could be one big reason why baby is simply not able to go head down. They just don't have the right space. So another big reason I tell moms that they should be getting adjusted all throughout pregnancy is because there's a special technique called Webster technique. It can be used on anyone who's weight bearing, so basically anyone who's walking. However, it was especially designed for women who were pregnant. So the Webster technique not only addresses the position of the pelvis throughout pregnancy, it addresses those ligaments, especially the round ligaments right in the front of the belly. Those are those ligaments that can become incredibly uncomfortable on the bottom side of your belly when they're pulled unevenly and tight on one side over the other. That tightness, like I said before, can cause the uterus to be restricted in position and movement, which may make things tough for baby to get into the right position. The second thing that I did is called a forward-leaning inversion. And I'm going to show it to you in a minute, but I want to talk about the importance of it, why you do it, and what things you need to be careful of when you're doing it. So a forward-leaning inversion is a technique that the group Spinning Babies highly recommends all moms do regardless of the position of your baby. Doing a forward-leaning inversion is going to allow more room in the bottom of the uterus so baby can snuggle into the right position. The first thing you need to do when you're trying to do a forward-leaning inversion is find the right surface to do it on. For me, my chiropractic table was actually the best surface that I found. It wasn't too high off the ground, but also not too low. So surfaces in your home that might work might be a set of stairs, perhaps a fireplace, ottoman, couch, even if you have a low bed. Just find the one that feels like the right fit for you. So I do want to caution, there are some women who shouldn't be doing this. If you have any blood pressure issues, perhaps amniotic fluid issues, risk of stroke, things like that might be reasons that you might not want to do an inversion. So make sure that you talk to your birth provider before doing them. The first few times that you do an inversion, you're going to want to make sure to have someone else there who can make sure that you're doing it right, and they're also going to make sure that you're not uncomfortable, you don't pass out, anything weird like that. Just make sure you have someone else there with you. Once you're in the inverted position, you want to hold that for about 30 seconds, which they say is about 3 deep breaths. And this is something that you can do daily. For me, I actually did them a couple times a day when our baby was breech. So I'll be showing you an inversion in just a minute, but just to talk you through the steps. First, you're going to get on the surface that you want to use in order to do your inversion. You're going to get your knees close to the edge, and then you're going to walk yourself down first to your hands and then down to your elbows. At this point, you want to make sure that your back is nice and flat and your head is hanging freely. It should be a very comfortable position for you. Once you're in that inverted position, like I said, you can do 3 deep breaths, which should be about 30 seconds. Another thing you can do, but don't have to, is you can actually sway your hips back and forth. It might feel really nice to do that. Just to know, when you're in that inverted position, for me at least, I felt that I was breathing a little more heavily. It felt a little more strained, and that's simply because of the weight of the baby. Now it's on your diaphragm versus usually babies below your diaphragm, so you don't have that squishing. But when you're in that inverted position, it's totally normal to have a little more strenuous breathing. So just make sure to focus on nice, slow, deep breaths. It's only 3 of them. And here's the key. This is the big part of doing the forward-leaning inversions. When you're done, you want to come back up, walk yourself back up so that you're sitting in a nice, upright, kneeling position. This is what's going to allow the uterus to align with the pelvis in order to allow baby to go into the correct position. When you're in that kneeling position, take 2 slow, deep breaths, and then rest back on your heels for 1 more slow, deep breath. This is what makes it work. So let's talk about doing that inversion. First, you want to start with your knees towards the edge of that nice firm surface. You come up here and then you actually walk yourself down to your hands and then down to your elbows. Keeping your back nice and flat and your head hanging freely, you want to take 3 deep breaths here. Remember that because of the position of your diaphragm, breathing might be a little more strenuous here. After your 3 deep breaths, you want to come back up onto your hands, up to the surface, and into this high kneeling position. Take 2 deep breaths here, and then release onto your heels, and 1 more deep breath here. And the third thing that I did in order to help my baby flip back head down is I did cat-cow stretches. So during a cat-cow stretch, you get on all 4s, and it's really quite simple. You take an inhale and drop your belly out low, just like a cow has their belly hanging low. And then as you inhale, you lift and arch your back up, just like a cat would when they're scared. For me, I did each of these about 10 times, and I would do them immediately following my inversions. That's not to say that doing them in different routines doesn't work. This is just what worked best for me. Now let's do some cat-cow stretches. All you have to do is find the floor and get on all 4s. To do the cow position, you just drop your belly out just like a cow would. And then for cat position, you arch your back up to the ceiling as high as you can go, and that's what a cat does when they're scared. When I drop into the cow position, I like to take a nice deep breath in, and when I go into the cat position, I like to let it all out and exhale everything. And you just repeat this as many times as you want, but I like to do them about 10 times. So there you have it. Those are the top 3 things that I recommend to moms who are struggling with breech babies. Like I said, most providers will not be concerned about a breech baby until they're closer to 35, 36 weeks. Then we might start talk about taking a few more steps of action. However, these are some things that any mom can be doing anytime throughout the pregnancy. Thanks so much for joining me for Buns in the Ovens today. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope these are some things that you can start implementing in your pregnancy today. Make sure you sign up to receive our Buns in the Ovens newsletters that come out weekly so that you can get this content right to your inbox. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.